Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about the fact that the deadlift is probably the best test of strength, but it is not the best way to build strength. And that's going to be a controversial statement, and it's something I've arrived at after many, many years of training, many years of lifting, things that I've observed. And it has to do with things like stimulus to fatigue and everything else. Now, as far as a test of strength goes, I believe the deadlift, and notice I just said the deadlift, it doesn't matter. Any heavy pull from the floor, I don't care if it's a conventional, I don't care if it's a sumo. The deadlift is the best test of strength, as long as we're pulling from a fairly standardized height. And the reason I say that is that if we're all pulling from a standardized height, pretty similar spot on the floor, not 5 or 6 inches difference, it's just a good judge of your strength. And it's not even a judge of relative strength, because that's the thing that's most interesting. We know that body weight scales the worst on the deadlift out of all of the big three. In other words, there's very, very little difference sometimes from weight class to weight class as far as different records go. And in some cases, the guy in the next weight class down will literally have a stronger deadlift than the guy 1 and 2 weight classes above him, both in tested and untested. So the deadlift is one of those exercises that's not even largely dependent upon body weight, weight class, any of that, to the same extent that any other lift is. It is just a straight test of brute strength. And particularly like the conventional deadlift. Like a conventional deadlift is a very, very low skill exercise. A person can be taught to perform a perfect conventional deadlift in one coaching session. With one-on-one coaching, one-on-one teaching, it shouldn't take anybody more than 15 to 20 minutes to perform a beautiful textbook perfect deadlift that they could walk over and pull the max with, if they have proper instruction. Now, long distance, that's a little bit harder. But the deadlift uses your back, a lot of the muscles in the body, and it's just a big test of strength. And I truly believe that it's the best test of overall strength. I think other lifts, when combined, like powerlifting as a combination, is a good test of relative strength. It's a good test of absolute strength. But if we wanted to pick just one lift that we can say this lift is the test of strength, like if we had to narrow it down to one lift that matters the most, we remove weight classes, everything else is how much can you deadlift. The best test of strength tells you if a person is truly strong or not. Now, obviously, things like arm lengths, leg lengths, things like that will matter to some extent, which is why we have whole sports like powerlifting where we test multiple lifts, not just the deadlift. For that reason, to deal with all these other variables. Deadlift, test of strength. The problem is that the deadlift isn't always the best way to build strength. And when I say that, I'm not saying you shouldn't practice the deadlift. I'm not saying people who want to get strong at deadlifting shouldn't do some deadlifting. But what I'm saying is that you can build your deadlift muscles doing other exercises. In other words, what the deadlift is good at is finding the weak links in the whole kinetic chain. In other words, if you have a weak muscle somewhere, particularly on the backside of your body, which is really where more of your strength is generated. If you have a weak muscle anywhere on the backside of your body, deadlifts are going to tend to find it. And the different deadlift forms will expose them in greater degrees, which is one of the reasons it's like I try to stay pretty strong on both the sumo and the conventional, is because if there's a large discrepancy between the two, unless there's a very, very serious anatomical difference in you that would explain it, it's finding your weaknesses, right? In other words, if you can sumo 450 but you can conventional 550, that's a problem. It's exposing muscle weaknesses. It's exposing muscle weaknesses. You have some imbalances that you need to work on. And there can be exceptions to that. Some people it has to do with their biomechanics. But generally, for most people, the most, 3/4 of people, that's going to be true. But the deadlift is good at exposing weaknesses. It will find your weak muscle. If your spinal erectors are weak, it will come out on your pulling. And even if you have really, really strong erectors in the back, if your hamstrings are weak, it will come out at certain parts of your pull. If your glutes are weak, it'll come out at certain parts of your pull. So it's great for exposing weaknesses. That's why it's such a good test of strength. But in terms of building strength, we build most of our strength through our hypertrophy. And even people out there, I know coaches and people who argue that basically the deadlift is just your erectors. That's all you have to have really strong is just your back, and nothing else truly matters that much. It's everything else accounts for like 10% of your deadlift. And there are coaches who say that, who believe that. I don't know that I fully buy that. I don't. I will say that a person with really strong erectors will have a good deadlift even with other lagging muscles, but they're leaving maybe 100 pounds on the table by not building the other stuff up. They're just gifted and they have strong erectors. I mean, someone like Max Tuning, not particularly good at anything else, but he's got big erectors, got a lot of trap in erector. But if he built all the other muscles up to where his other lifts went up, his deadlift would skyrocket even more. He's just gifted at that lift, and he's lean. He has a good strength to weight ratio. But it's not particularly good for building things up because the deadlift is very, very fatiguing. And hypertrophy is the name of the game. Size equals strength. Size equals strength. And if you do nothing but deadlift, unless you are very gifted at the deadlift, you're going to reach a threshold to where you're going to limit the amount of training you can do. You're going to limit the amount of recovery you can do as far as just building your deadlift up. And in other words, doing 15 or 20 sets of heavy deadlifts every week is probably not going to work for most people. Not saying there aren't exceptions. Again, let's come over to the point. There are people who train that way, who are quite strong on the deadlift. But that's the exception, not the norm. Generally speaking, you're going to want to build up all the muscles in your deadlift. You're going to want to use other exercises to build your strength. All right, you're going to want to do exercises to build your erectors up. Things like good mornings. You're going to want to do things for your hamstrings like glute ham raises. And in fact, I would argue that the extra hamstring work reduces injury risk dramatically on the deadlift. Even if people want to make the point that hamstring work may not contribute to, say, a conventional as much, it'll contribute to your sumo more. They can argue it may not contribute to your maximum strength that much on the conventional. It will. Not as much as some people would like it to. Still reduce your chances of injuries. Injuries will make you weak. You tear a hamstring and then come back and tell me how strong you are. Exactly. Work for your traps will improve your deadlift. Work for your lats will improve your deadlift. And if you think about it, all of these muscles can be built with exercises that are a lot easier to recover from. They're a lot easier to recover from. So in that context, I think a very good argument can be made that the deadlift itself is not a particularly great lift to build strength on. And it has to do with the amount of fatigue on the low back, the axial loading, everything else. I've seen it proposed by a lot of experts that even if you just wanted to get bigger and thicker and stronger with it easier to recover from lift, a snatch grip deadlift, deficit deadlifts, things like that for your actual volume on your pulls, even if you're doing low reps. You can get more hypertrophy with slightly less fatigue. We can make the argument for the sumo deadlift. It puts less stress on the low back. I have, even when I was doing all my speed work a while back, when I was doing any volume, I rebuilt my deadlifts up doing speed pulls with sumo. Right, there's a case to be made for that. Box squats to build your sumo. Works very, very well. But a conventional deadlift, I would argue that a very strong conventional deadlift can be built largely with good mornings, pen lay rows, some hamstring work. Now, I happen to like glute ham raises, but hamstring work in general. It'll contribute to that. Contribute to all of that. It'll build all the muscles up to help you deadlift. And those exercises are easy to recover from. You can do a lot of training volume. I've even seen good arguments for building a conventional of not even pulling your normal conventional, just coming in and doing deficit work for your practice because it's easier to recover from. And it teaches you to get stronger out of the bottom, which is where most people are weakest, while doing all those other exercises for most of your volume. Okay, that would actually build strength quite a bit better. Build your whole back and everything stronger. So I think there's a fair argument to be made here for the fact that, yes, the deadlift in general, and notice again, just deadlifts, I didn't specify a specific one, is the best test of strength. It is the best test of strength of knowing just how brutally strong that person is. But deadlifting all the time may not be the best way to build the actual strength potential, right? And that's the difference. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.